제 쳔버조던 힘이 장 돈을 모는 쳔버가 벼다 바그르 다른 잔도 줄물도 돈바 되제 잔라 기정 자르 강라도 그런 전혀 그런 용돈 건조가위 제츠르다 돈이 냠보르 비남저바 혼저람저 zon으로 소란데 오늘 저러 생이 장건서 저걸 되게 장도 열라 제메 번조 장랑 소란데 공저 또반 버르 신지로无上甚深微妙法，被千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。为度化一切众生，请大家发无上的菩提心。好，首先念传承啊，今天如意宝藏论的。第一等三业经过这些切个，俺是或者的三本业车啦，也全本这这年东车生，也这些等人家当结巴过。第二等天的人所浪nam le，且当啥子真le，前边把龙宝些人们接nam的。接着ram张他们龙根这人情小事，那把人把些我当边这把马拉嘎些，第一小事南卡第一喏，帮人们些嘞古嘛喏，多几件天那个呢，像到或者的东车这个跑，其实呢什么就是跟拉西边些。你把南风东车写的像车，三把些日国的把吧别东跑。Jiba Samba Shirun Bara Jerton Ba Japan Korlo Namza Nirdon Pa Chamsam Nebzon Rupshi de Rushi do Lumbo Chile Japchung Bate Chi Nong the Ruru Longam Sombra Jatran of Jan Sergi Sajrane Sergi Rabdan Treasury Korana Nyashon Zandan Devjan Shumtan Zan Sandan Chandang Tana Digbat Starna Nam the Menkidan Zanra门前藏着南米西米南方那个样的前脸拍把的怎么可以人呢？这类这把的门前的真是写的立起这个得到能够所以写这个讲像的，就像咱们前辈让人根据玩那么更为错。rom so yang lag yardan chi kang wa yang nam rabdan so tam nyam yang che yang samjir kan lam chongba yin man kin zan nen khori wa cha chen na shi jam so yang de sambam dang tong chang ne shi sa ni ho zi de lang nam sa ji che dang kan nyam to 下面我们
Now let's begin our class on the wish-fulfilling treasury. In the next few days, I will give you the classes while practicing in retreat. Today our class is on wish-fulfilling treasury, and then in the next 3 days, I will give you classes on the Shwangama Sutra. The content that we're going to cover today include a particular verse that we didn't talk about from last class, which is on the earth wheel. It is of 320,000 yojanas in thickness. Circumference is 1.2345 yojanas. Previously, we've already talked about the earth wheel. The ground is the golden ground, the Vajra golden ground. Just as how water would turn into ice, in fact, this earth wheel is also quite vast. The depth of the water is 800,000 yojanas in depth. The water wheel had already turned into this vast ocean. On top of the wheel of water, the earth wheel started to form. The thickness of it is about 320,000 yojanas. We know that the whole water wheel takes the shape of a circle. But the wheel of earth is of a rectangular shape, and the color is a golden ochreish color. So on top of a circle water wheel, there is a rectangular shaped earth wheel. The vastness of it, in terms of the size of it, is 1.2345 million yujanas. This is the vastness. The circumference should be 3 times of it. Why is that so? It is according to the comparison to the water wheel, because the water wheel is a circle. In the verse, it says that the vastness, maybe the vastness refers to the diameter, because the wheel is of a shape of a circle. And then if we want to calculate for the circumference, then we have to take the diameter and then times it by pi. I'm not quite sure if that's how it should be calculated. But over here, Longchenpa said that it's about a 3 times or threefold. Of course, Longchenpa didn't say it should be timed by 3.14. He said that it is threefolds of the size. Now we've already talked about the base, where it supports everything. Now we're going to look at the mountains, continents, and oceans as bases. Previously, we already talked about the bases, or what can be of a support. But over here, it says that the mountains and continents and oceans, they're also part of the support system. I think it is because the reference points are different. It is because the water wheel and earth wheel, they take different wheels as supports, but over here the mountains, continents, and oceans are still the support for the sentient beings. Therefore, they're still part of the support, the base. Now, the first one talks about the brief. The first aspect out of it is the brief explanation, then the extensive explanation. The brief explanation says that on top of which it holds mountains, oceans, and continents. Later, we'll cover it more in detail. It talks about the mountains, Mount Sumeru, 7 golden mountains, Mount Chakravarti, and the other mountains that surrounds the Mount Sumeru, and then the 8 great oceans and continents, the 12 continents. So let's look at the common cause which created the mountains and continents. The verses over here says that churned by water and earth, rains from clouds, Sumeru golden mountains surrounded by continents, formed by the superior, intermediate, and inferior separating winds. What it means is that previously, we've already talked about the brief summary. And now let's look at everything in extensive explanation. This part is quite important, though that the cosmology, the Buddhist cosmology, and then the formation and then the shape of the cosmos, still varies even in the Buddhism tradition according to different sutras and shastras, and then according to tantras, the numbers and the effects are a bit different according to different schools or different traditions. And the reasons were expounded in other teachings that we've already talked about already. But briefly speaking, there are a few reasons as follows. The first one is that when Shakyamuni Buddha was in this world, the cosmology of Buddhism complied with the Hindu tradition, especially the Buddhist tradition started about 2,500 years ago, and before that there were 4,000 or 5,000 years of religion, and their worldview, their cosmology had already then became well accepted by the people back then. And Shakyamuni Buddha, out of compassion, comply with the worldly beings' knowledge. That is one aspect. And the other aspect is, according to Avatamsaka Sutra and the Kalachakra Tantra, also the Mahayana Abhidharma, as well as the Hinayana Abhidharma, there are different teachings, there are different topics, different presentations. This is also to comply with the different sentient beings, because the audience are different. Some of the sentient beings would perceive it in one way, and some would be the other. Therefore, to comply with the sentient beings' capacity, the teachings would vary a bit too. In general, that's the cosmology teaching that was fitting in the historical background back then. Previously, we've already talked about the wind wheel and the earth wheel, how the wind wheel would keep turning and then the earth wheel would form. And then because of the churning and the spinning, then on top of this Vajra ground, there arises this gathering wind, which we already talked about as well. So this gathering wind kept on churning the earth wheel and the water wheel. Sometimes you would probably think that, well, water, sure, you can turn it, but how about earth? Why would one be able to turn the earth element or the earth wheel? This is rather a special point of view from Longchenpa. For example, according to the Mahayana Abhidharma and Vipassana Shastra, it talks about how the water wheel was turned, but not the earth wheel. However, at the time of formation, just as how water, when they are frozen, sometimes they would also have different uneven and rugged ups and downs. Or to give you another example, something that is thicker than water, whenever we turn milk into butter, with the constant spinning and churning, then the mountains and then continents will start slowly to form. It is because of the collective karma of the sentient beings. And then slowly the clouds would gather within space and pour down rain. The clouds that contains all kinds of elements would start to gather around in the space. Later pour down the rain, and then the Mount Sumeru and then the continents would slowly to form. The clouds of all kinds of domain has the superior, intermediate, and inferior, the three aspects. The superior aspect of it is the separating wind, which then forms the Sumeru, and then the intermediate separating wind then forms the 7 golden mountains, and then the inferior separating wind forms the Chakravarta mountains and the 4 great continents and the 8 continents. According to Mahayana Abhidharma, it is says that the superior wind forms the Sumeru, and Mount Sumeru is formed out of the 4 great jewels. And then the intermediate wind forms the 7 golden mountains, and they are made of the element gold. The inferior wind forms the 4 great elements, which is made of earth. The Chakravarta, the Mount Chakravarta, is made of metal element. So the formation of the 4 continents, let it be mountains or continents, the initial material, the initial elements are different. This is the 7 great mountains. How did they form? They formed because of all kinds of thick clouds. And now let's look at the characteristics of each of the mountains and continents. The Mount Sumeru and the 7 mountains first. Let's look at Mount Sumeru, which contains the actual explanation and then the measurements of each. It over here says that on the 4 directions of Mount Sumeru are the silver, lapis lazuli, lotus gem, and gold respectively. So Mount Sumeru, the excellent mountain or excellent great mountain, it is formed of the 4 types of jewels or 4 types of gems. On the east, it is made of silver, but according to some other Shastra and Sutras, it says that it is made of crystal. So it is of the color white. And then of the south, it is made of lapis lazuli. The beings of Jambudvipa, which lives on the southern continents of the Mount Sumeru, we see the sky being blue is because of the reflection of the blue lapis lazuli from the mountain of Mount Sumeru. And then on the west is the jewel of lotus, so it's a ruby color, red crystal. And then of the north is pure gold, therefore gold. Therefore, the 4 directions of the sky would take different colors of white, blue, red, and gold. According to the Long Agama Sutra, it says that the crystals of the celestial beings, for example, the crystals of the eastern part of the celestial beings, they are white, and of the southern, they are blue, and of the west, they are the red, and of the north, they are yellow. So instead of the making of the Mount Sumeru are out of different gems, according to Long Agama Sutra, it states that they are of different colored crystals. They're all crystals. But we can't really have a way to know that. In knowing that, rather we have to rely on the teachings to gather an understanding. It is said that Longchenpa, at the time of practicing on his deity, when he was 19 years of age, he traveled in the palm of Sarasvati to Mount Sumeru for a few days. Therefore, Dongchenpa is very clear of how Mount Sumeru looks like. Also, Mount Sumeru has the base of a rectangular shaped base, including Mount Kailash. Though it looks more like a cone, but it has the rectangular base. Some of the temples also study quite in detail of the various shapes of the mountains. Over here, it says that Mount Sumeru has this rectangular base. Some of the mountains, the formation of it, and some of the other mountains, in fact, not just Mount Sumeru, for example, Mount Kailash, and then the Egyptian pyramids, they also have this, the pyramid shape is of the rectangular shaped base. Other than those pyramid shapes, there are thousands of pyramid shapes in this world. These are the natural wonders that lays on the bottom of the ocean, of the various places in this world. Nobody knows when it was built, and nobody knows why it is of that shape. Maybe some of them were left behind for 4,000 years, and some say that it is a very special architecture for the communication of between humanity to space. There are various kinds of sayings like that too. When we talk about Mount Sumeru, it says that there are the 4 different colors, and then the next part, it talks about the dimensions of the mountains and the continents. This verse needs to be placed at the later part, in the later part of the textual outline, according to Mipa Rinpoche. So the next textual outline should start from at the 4 layers of lower medium part of Mount Sumeru. Now let's continue with the measurements of Mount Sumeru and the other continents' measurement as well. Mount Sumeru, in fact, has 4 layers. The Vajra surpassed that of the inner Sumeru. There is the inner Sumeru, there is also the outer Sumeru. I think it's probably going to be a little confusing without a picture. It would be really wonderful if we have a blackboard and if we can draw on it. But I think it should be okay to understand. Now, Mount Sumeru has the height of 84,000 yojanas, as you may be aware of. It has the 84,000 yojanas upwards and below. It also has 84,000 yojanas in the water. So Mount Sumeru has the 4 layers of water. Above water level, there is 84,000 yojanas, and then the other half is below the water surface.
中间的下面是相当于是我们现在的这个佛塔啊，或者呢就是相当于是我们的
intermediate level of Mount Sumeru is what we call the stupas.
对，就是
It's just like the base of a stupa.
下一方的话呢，就是有一层一层的往外突出。
If you've seen those Buddhist stupas, you would notice that there are different layers, almost like steps, on the sides of the stupas. So it's just like that.
然后呢，就是须弥山的。就是超出了
Mount Sumeru also has the different layers.
就1万啊，就是6000个右训，就是超出的
And
16000个右训。
base layer surpassed that of the Mount Sumeru's width to 16,000 yujanas.
的话呢，就是应该算是最高的，就是最高的。然后就是从上面往下层的话呢，就是那么第4层是地下最宽的。
So counting from top to bottom, the bottom one should be the widest.
是这个中间是有一个洞一样的话呢，它两边都是这个出来了，就是它的这个地基吧，就是也就是说下面的这个就是基。
And it acts almost as a base for Mount Sumeru. If we were to visualize Mount Sumeru as a cylinder in the middle,
如果这样的话呢？
Then from the center, it extends to the two sides to 16,000 yujanas.
就是它的这个3倍，也就是说是长度是宽度
And
的
then
3倍
it is of threefold
那么其余
in
的话呢，就是刚才
length.
我们讲的最下面的这个4层，就是，然后其余的话呢，就是实际上是，也就是说这个。就也是宽度的3倍，就是当然宽度的3倍这样的话呢，就是实际上是在这里呢
，in terms of width, the width also measures
它的
threefold.
内部的这个宽度是不是这样算的呢？就是这个应该是不是啊？就是所以在这里呢，大家这个算的过程当中呢，就是应该
During the calculation, does it calculate as is part of the inner measurements or not? I don't think it should. The inner measurements should be calculated as part of it, but it should be simple to calculate this. Now let's look at the 4 levels. The second level accumulates and is surpassed of 8,000 in the width. The third level is the crystal bright light, which surpasses 4,000, and the fourth one is the accumulation of wheels that surpass 2,000. Over here, the thousands are counted with yujanas again, all the way counting from the bottom to top. The base one is made of crystal, and then on the second level is accumulation, and then on that level it is half of 84,000. And then on the third level it is the crystal radiant light or crystal bright light, and then it takes about half of the previous one, which is 4,000, and then the next layer is the wheel accumulation, then it is half of the previous one, which is 2,000.
上面的话呢，那最高是就是刚才第4轮就是论计。
So the first one is 16,000, the second one 8,000, the third one is 4, and then the last one is 2,000. Adding the 4 layers together, the measurement is 40,000 yujanas. And then above water, the Sumeru is 80,000 in height. Half of it is 40,000, and then the bottom, at the very base of it, at the surface of water, it is of layers by layers, and then there is one that protrudes from that part of it. Whenever you look for a picture, I think you will be more clear of it. The verse goes, the Sumeru surpassed that of the water 80,000 yujanas. The mountains and continents within water are the same. The 80,000 yujanas covers the golden ground. In the center, there is the Mount Sumeru, and then there are 7 golden mountains, and then on the outskirts, there are the Chakravarti mountains. Altogether, there are 9 mountains altogether. And then there are 4 great continents. On each of the great continents, there are 2 smaller continents. Therefore, there are 12 continents. However, let it be the continents or Mount Sumeru, they all have a part of the base that's submerged in the water, but the total height are the same. There are 80,000 yojanas. So Mount Sumeru is of the height of 160,000 yojanas. In the center, the tallest part of the Mount Sumeru, it is, sometimes we call it Sumeru, the excellent peak or the excellent mountain, which pierces through the skies. It is utterly magnificent. So we call it excellent or wonderful mountain Sumeru. Sometimes we use the name Supreme. The teachings are similar to the Abhidharma as well, but sometimes the numbers or very few names can be a little different, or sometimes the distance could be a little different as well. Let's look at the 7 mountains. What are the 7 mountains? On the outskirts of Sumeru, there are 7 great golden mountains. These mountains are the Yugandhara mountain, Isadhara mountain, the Karavika mountain, Shuddhasana mountain, Asakana mountain, Vinataka mountain, and Nimindara mountain. These mountains are as high as the skies, and the base is also wide. That extends, that surpasses that of the water. This is quite clearly expounded in the auto commentary. So in the center is the Mount Sumeru, and surrounded by it, there are the 7 great mountains. Out of the 7 great mountains, the first one is the Yugandhara mountain. Usually, the Yugandhara mountain is also called the yoke holder mountain, because that's the part of the handlebar when you're holding on the chariot. So it is in the shape of that. And then the next one is the Isadhara mountain, which is named after the shape of it, that it looks like a plow. It's rather quite straight. It is a long, rectangular shaped mountain, rather straight and flat. And then the third one is Kadiraka or Karavika mountain. It is the mountain that has lots of the rosewood on it. And sometimes when we say sandan is the acacia wood. So on this mountain, there are lots of rosewoods and acacia wood and sandalwoods and so on. And then the next one is Shuddhasana mountain, because it's really beautiful. And then the mountain in the shape of the year of horse. And then it is called Ashokana mountain. Then the next one is Vinadhara mountain, because the shape of it looks like the trunk of the elephant. In terms of the last mountain, it's Nimindara mountain. It surrounds all the 7 mountains. Some of them. This is also called the mountain that's in the shape of a fish mouth. Each of them are half of the height of the previous one. So the first one is of 40,000 yojanas in height, the second one is 20, and the third one 10, and the fourth one is 5,000 yojanas, and the fifth one is 2,500 yojanas. Sixth one is 1,250 yojanas, and seventh one is about 625 yojanas. In terms of the width for the taller mountains should have a bigger base, and then the shorter mountains, they would have a smaller base.
Those are
the seven mountains. On the outside of the mountains, there is a circle of mountains called Chakravarti mountains, and they are formed of iron or metal. Out of all the golden mountains on the outskirts of it, surrounded those mountains, there's a mountain range that's made of iron, made of metal. And then the height is of the height of the Nimindara mountain. So that makes the Chakravarti mountains of the height of 312.5 yojanas. Now let's talk about the oceans. There are the inner oceans and then external or outer oceans. The inner oceans are the oceans around the seven mountains, and then outside of the seven mountains, those are called the outer oceans. In the southern continent of Jambudvipa and the eastern continent of Pura Vidina, the oceans that we have over here around the continents, which are inside of the Chakravarti mountain ranges, we have the saltwater ocean. And then it continued to say that after the mountains and continents are formed within the space, by the force of the karma of sentient beings, the clouds started to form again and then pours down raindrops as the size of the wheel of chariots. There are various shapes of ground and continents and the mountains, and then within it, it pours down all kinds of raindrops too. So in the middle, there is one ocean. The inner ocean is called the ocean of enjoyment. Other than that, surrounded by the Mount Sumeru, the different water formed a different sized ocean. So what are those oceans what are the oceans like then? In the verse it says that filled with the water of 8 qualities, the enjoyment ocean, the sea of enjoyments, it is of the same size of the 7 mountains in width. However, the length of it is of 3 folds. Why is the ocean called the ocean of enjoyments? It is because of the 8 Naga kings usually would enjoy and play within this ocean. Therefore, it is called the ocean of enjoyment. According to Vinaya Sutra and Abhidharma, it says that the water within this ocean is completely different than the ordinary water, because the water has the 8 supreme qualities. Therefore, the Naga kings would enjoy this water. Now, in terms of the width, it is the same as the 7 mountains. And then the length, however, is the length is of the 3 folds. This is also talked about in the auto commentary. Now, to continue, at the edge of the Salt Ocean to that of the Chakravarti Mountains, the outer ocean are vast as the 322 yojanas. So the ocean on the outside all the way to Nimindara, so between Nimindara mountain to the Chakravarti mountains, those oceans in between are called the outer ocean, and then those are the saltwater ocean. But then the width yojanas are different than the previous ones. Previously, we were talking about the few thousands and maybe tens of thousands, but these oceans are as wide as 322,000 yojanas. Now we've already covered on the mountains, continents, and oceans. We'll stop here today on the wish-fulfilling treasury.